Hello out there in Autism Land. Welcome back to Autistic Radio for our Sunday recording of Harry's 555 programme. Sponsored by Coldpack. Coldpack.co.uk makes this possible with their financial donations whenever you use their website, coldpack.co.uk. What do we have to start the show with today, Harry?
Hello everyone, this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 24th of May 2026. And to start us off today, Harry's Facebook is where we share the Facebook posts from the autisticradio.com page. And we're starting today, as normal, with a poem. And the poem is from myself this week, and it's called When Things Are at Pause. The stillness of the night, thinking back in time, the fulfillment, the regret, the reflection. It is life lived. What's people's thoughts?
It's a beautiful, as beautiful little poem. A very fine distillation.
Thanks, Teresa. Just to explain slightly, just to explain what the poem's about. It was written during the night, last night, going into this morning. And it's something that I reflect as I get older, is when things stop. It's when you think of the past in terms of how much time's went past, how much achievement I feel that I've fulfilled, how much regret I feel I have, and that sort of kind of time where it's kind of the overthinking, but reflection at the same time. Because normally what I do, as many others do, is you just go on with it and it's like 100 miles an hour. And every now and again, it's just like a pause, and then I go through that sort of emotion, that sort of feeling. And most of the time, it's fairly positive, but sometimes it can be a negative one. It just depends what's happened, obviously, in the last couple of days or whatever. So that's what it's all about.
It's beautifully balanced. It's almost like it wasn't about just last night, but about the overall experiences that you've had of this time. And I really do like this topic of yours, the stillness of the night. It is really, the world has stopped, and and then your thought and go. And then what you've told us by way of background is beautiful.
There's a triangular relationship in it for me. Fulfillment, regret, and reflection. It's not just nostalgia. The quiet time in the stillness of the night where your head and your mind is so loud is not just about regretting things from the past. It is also about remembering things that you achieved or did or fulfilled, things that were attempted. And it also is that time where you get to work on the reflection, the relationship between those two things. And I do like the conclusion here, because when it says it is life lived, it feels to me as though the author is saying that that attention, that time, is life. That attention, that noticing, that present reflection, regret and fulfillment, and the quiet time of thinking is life. That is when you are most. That is when life is. When its power is available to you and noticeable. Those cracks in silent time.
What is all that stuff that comes in to fill the stillness? When the final line says it is life lived, I was almost thinking it's stillness filled with thinking. And as Harry's explained, I think in that moment, the still of the night, is when the mind can be quite active, thinking about things. Almost like if we're distracted during the day when things are really busy, then our minds are not operating so much. Maybe. I don't know, just some thoughts on it that have been triggered by this minimal reflection.
I think what I take from it is that the consciousness is life. Life, the force of life, is about your own consciousness. And the poet is saying that there are these times when you're in your own head, or your head is being able to expand out into a quiet world around you, that your consciousness going over time, memory, things that you fulfilled, things you regretted, and the juxtaposition of the two, that consciousness is the experience of being alive. That's how I see it.
One of the best things about the poem to me is that it is allowing everybody to it you've created such a little diamond there that a reader can really, you know, take so much out of it. The beauty of it as a poem, the way it stands. And then for me, I'm thinking this is wonderful, this is universal, and why I love it as a piece of poetry.
In the text, Robbie shares, "My mind rarely shuts up. All I have now is memories. My life is over." He then goes on to say, "It is nothing but an existence until I finally pass away." I I see in the poem the antidote to that. I see in the poem an active concentration on the value of of being in the moment, being conscious, being in that night. I see that as the power. I see that as the absolute antidote to what's written in the text there.
What I'd like to say about that is it depends on the night. So for me, in the stillness of the night, sometimes I do ruminate and the thoughts can be negative. And that's the line, the regret or the reflection. it also depends on when I'm experiencing it, not just like a good time or bad time in my life, but when in the night. So if it is that I've, as I do sometimes, stay up all night because the night is a wonderful time to be, I'm clear of mind oftentimes. But if I've slept and I've slept poorly and then I wake up too early, I'm ruminating. And I think this poem is covering all of those aspects. And I challenge the listener to wonder, have you had a variety of experience in the night?
Is this obviously an autistic poet? I'm wondering because it feels to me as though there is a theme about autism here, but it's a theme that's also shared amongst the general population anyway. But I think this time in the night when we are ruminating, going over things, regretting, revisiting, and perhaps recycling past hurts as we do as autistic people. Maybe that's part of it as well. Maybe that's the autistic sensibility that comes through from the autistic author.
I think it is this poem, and possibly also universal. But about the autistic part of it, I think I've told you before, I had this roommate in university who would sleep sometimes in the day to be awake at night because it is still, and for autistic people, that can be critical to thinking. And she could only write in the night. But maybe now that I know I'm autistic, I sometimes take advantage of the stillness of the night.
So, Harry, were you up all night?
Say that again. You broke up. Right.
No, it's just GR sent me a message in another window and I just got totally confused. Sorry, delete that. Yeah, what was I asking you? No, I was going to ask were you up all night, but not really all night. Was this a moment where you were awake through the night?
Yes, it was, because that's my actual, normal routine. I mean, strangely, I was actually up until 9 o'clock this morning. Then went to sleep. But then again, I was napping between 6 o'clock to 12 at midnight because I don't know why. I just felt I needed to rest, and then I was hoping to actually sleep all night, but I just wasn't able to. So that was part of the reason why I wrote the poem. But it reminded me of all those nights I've been up, not always up all night, but been up late in the night. And because that's when the world, at least locally, stops and things calm down enough for thinking time. And what I enjoy about it, most of the time, sometimes it is enjoyable, but what I enjoy about it is each time this time comes, obviously more time's been passed, so there's more to reflect on. And it's like, oh, this time has passed, how long have I lived in this house, what age am I now, what have I been achieving, with some regrets, but a lot of it was basically a positive spin, because I put the regret in there as a sort of realistic thing about that's what life is. There's a lot of regret, but there's a lot of fulfillment as well. And the reflection of both of those things. So it's basically like a night owl poem, yeah. Yes, I was online as well, yeah. I'm always online when I'm awake.
I only ask because it's a different kind of energy from the energy that's just being alone with silence, and even the silence of being within four walls is different from the silence of being outside at 4 a.m. that kind of external stillness as opposed to the internal stillness of a home, which can get extremely annoying if something like a fridge is beginning to dominate your mind or stuff like that. So, different energies in that space.
As I was thinking about it when you were reading it, it sent me in two different tangent directions that are tangential to this, which is again what makes it such a good poem. I quickly reflected on biphasal sleep. So that was a common thing in history where when we didn't have light sources, people would fall asleep early, wake up for a long window of time in the middle, and then have their second sleep. And it's a recently researched thing that is extremely interesting. But then also I thought about the mirror of this. What happens when you are asleep and some of these cleansing things are happening in your brain through REM sleep? Just a thought, maybe an autistic thought.
Yeah, Ray says in the text how the minimal retracts, or how the minimal. Ray says in the text how the minimal refracts into crystal complexity. I love that. I wish I wrote that in the poem.
But then it wouldn't have been minimal.
Yeah, true.
I have a little catchphrase which is something like, sometimes we have to regard a little as being more than enough. Not just enough, but more than enough.
It'd be the title, and you'd have to acknowledge Ray's contribution.
Yes, I would always do that. So, moving on. The next post is from Autistic Culture Podcast, which is a podcast which is the world's first and largest podcast network built entirely by and for autistic people. We believe that autistic voices, stories, and lived experiences deserve a dedicated media home, one that doesn't ask us to mask. And this is just something that I seen today or yesterday. I just thought it was worthwhile sharing. I haven't kind of looked into it as such, but it just caught my eye, this post, because it's another podcast or it's advertising or so. What's people's thoughts?
Oh, these things really irritate me. They're just this big image with words, and it doesn't say anything, does it? It declares things, there's an intention here, but what are you doing? Where's the detail? So do I have to go to their page to find out stuff about them? Okay, they've lured me in. Mission accomplished.
Well, going into the website, as you say, the link that it's advertising, what it says is the Autistic Culture Podcast Network is the first podcast network created and for autistic people to celebrate our culture, our voices, and our contributions to the world. Our network was created through a merger of the Autistic Culture Podcast and the Neurodivergent Experience Podcast. founders Simon Scott and Angela Kingdon have created an independent worker cooperative with podcasts by creators with decades of lived experience. Across our shows, we spotlight actually autistic perspectives and celebrate the depth, brilliance, and diversity of the autistic experience. Whether you're autistic, questioning, or an ally looking to learn, the Autistic Culture Podcast Networks invites you into a community where your weird is welcome, your passions are powerful, and your identity is culture. Discover the language, values, and the traditions of Autistica, and join a growing movement that defines what it means to be autistic. So that's the introductory information that's presented on its website. What's people's thoughts on that? The neurodivergent experience, or the neurodivergent experience, I'm sure, has been a podcast on its own, or maybe that's another one I'm getting mixed up with.
No, I think we've seen these two names before. Now they've put themselves into a thing. If you follow the link to autisticculturepodcast.com, there's lots of things on there. There's resources. They've got plenty of podcasts. They're making quite a few each week, or reissuing anyway. Member benefits, weekly meetings on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. UK time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, monthly autism education workshops, live annual in-person and virtual storytelling festival. So they've got lots and lots of things that they're all putting all around this. So it's a good thing, you know. They're doing similar things to we're doing, but more. They've also got a Substack there. They're asking for some money, and people will decide on that. The more people are putting their voices out, the more representation we get, I think.
The next post is from Autism Goggles, who are a community and education page, a place to learn about what it can mean to be autistic. And they shared the following, and it's about autistic burnout. Let's talk about one of the lesser known realities of autistic burnout: skill regression. This is when we literally lose access to skills and abilities we once relied on every day. For years, some of us managed lives that looked completely stable from the outside. We worked demanding jobs, raised children, answered emails, cooked meals, paid bills on time, kept schedules, drove through busy cities, organised appointments, and braced ourselves to endure hostile environments every day. Then burnout hits, and things that once felt automatic suddenly feel overwhelming. There is a particular kind of panic that comes from realising your brain can no longer do things it has handled for years. Tasks can suddenly feel mentally and physically impossible to approach. Skill regression can affect so many parts of our everyday functioning: our thinking skills, ability to communicate, daily living skills, and even long mastered talents. Here's what can happen. Making a phone call can feel impossible. Opening the email box can feel paralysing. Schedules, routines, and organisation systems we once relied on may be forgotten or avoided because they now trigger anxiety and overwhelm instead of structure and stability. We may stop cooking because the steps are insurmountable. Laundry piles up for weeks. Bills go unpaid. Grocery stores become unbearable. Some of us lose access to creative or learned skills too, including writing, crocheting, driving, or playing instruments. One of the hardest parts is that we often remember exactly who we used to be before burnout took hold, and the negative self-talk is relentless. Many people mistake this regression for laziness, lack of effort, or weakness of character. Research and lived experience are increasingly showing this is wrong. Prolonged autistic burnout caused by chronic masking, sensory overload, unrealistic demands, and living too long in survival mode can eventually overwhelm the nervous system. It becomes a struggle to think, respond to demands, and take action. What's people's thoughts so far on this?
There's a
Some of-
space between plodding along with things, burnout. There's a small bandwidth there where you can be extremely creative and productive, but it's whether you stop when you need to or whether you push yourself even further forward into burnout.
Teresa?
I missed some of it because of a sound issue, but I could read it when I couldn't hear it, so I recognize this. I do observe parts of my life and think I don't know how I did all those things. I know about the burnout. I know that I go through it. Um, I don't know what the advice is. Is it coming?
Yes, I've stopped me midway through because it was a bit of a long one. I thought it was shorter than it was, so that's why I took a break, just to give people a chance to give a response.
It was a good time for the break because I do really recognize it, and I don't feel upset when I look back and think, how on earth did I do that many things on an ongoing basis? I was like, really honestly, I look back and I just marvel. I don't worry that I have to do it again or anything.
The post continues. Skill regression does not have to mean skills are lost forever. But the problem is that the recovery is often approached in a way that makes no sense at all. If we are fortunate enough to take time away from work or responsibilities, and many of us do not have this luxury, we're advised to rest and may be given stress leave by a doctor. However, everything else seems to stay the same. Finances or family pressures soon force us back into the exact same situations that caused our autistic burnout in the first place. We are expected to return to the workplaces, schedules, sensory overload, and impossible expectations that caused us to crash in the first place. That is not a real recovery plan for autistic burnout or for waving goodbye to skill regression. We need help to focus on building strength-based lives for ourselves. Systems of support should be aimed at helping us build lives around our strengths, acquire accommodations as needed, allow flexible work hours, and provide regular assistance with daily living skills for those who need it. Most of all, acceptance should not be based on how well we can act non-autistic. With the right help, burnout and its sidekick, regression, can be overcome. Just keep in mind that returning to the cause of the problems is completely self-defeating. Have you ever lost skills? Did they come back? And what helped?
Who is
We should
writing
stop.
this? Oh, sorry. Who is writing this? An autistic
What?
person?
Autism Goggles. It's a page.
Oh. Are they autistic and are they therapists or something? Sorry about that.
On the surface, I'm unsure, but they have shared a lot of many things like this that comes from this perspective of an autistic person. But then again, it may be someone who may be a carer of an autistic person. But I'm unsure at this moment in time. We'll have a look. See what others think.
Right. What I was thinking is they're talking about examples of very, very busy lives. I've had my life be that busy for a good chunk of it. But what really happens is not that you get to go on stress leave and ever have anybody say to you, you're having skill regression. But really, to me, happens is that you burn right out and your life is, and then you're not going to go back to the same exact one. And hopefully you rebuild it a different way.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Teresa. I've not experienced burnout to the degree that's being described here. I've experienced periods of overwhelm. I've experienced too busy lives, doing too many things all at the same time in different times in my life. And I'm not going back there. And the way I avoided burnout was by seeing those overwhelms and addressing and not going back to the skills that this person is talking about losing and regressing from, not valuing them. We had somebody talking earlier, and they put in the text they were feeling extremely down, and they put that they had no value to society in some way associated with, out there skills, working, that kind of thing. We overvalue these things. We're more important than that. So the amount that we do, we need to let go of and see as unnecessary. And I worry that when I see people talking about healing after burnouts, what they're really doing often is giving people ways of patching themselves up and getting back on the fucking galloping horse again. And what they really need is to get off the fucking horse. Walk, trot around a bit instead of this gallop.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
that's when you have to
I agree.
So are people talking over each other? Can you not see the mics?
Harry, it gets a bit fast, and as I've explained before, I'm working two screens here, and things are very small with my glasses and stuff. So I can't. If I'm going to go for it, I'm going to go for it.
Go for it.
Well, now I've forgotten what I was going to say. What were we just talking about? Right, Jules was talking about, yeah, this is like reframing, yeah? If we're going to get patched up and go back to the same old thing, the horse, yeah, how do we then avoid that? And I think that's like, we preserve what is good within us and reframe it and not try and squeeze it into that square hole, you know, but make it work for us. And I've been looking at that a lot recently, is how to just flip things like that. I can't give you any really good positive examples just now, but it is about reframing what you do.
What I wanted to say was, I guess in a big extreme example of my, I had a whole household I was running. I had too much of a career that I was running. I think I traveled for work 33% of the time. It was like a big life, but it was an entirely masked. And so eventually, but through like large scale change that wasn't always my choice, I don't do it that way anymore. Although it is extremely busy, it's more on my own terms. It's actually good timing for this because it's too busy this year. And I do risk just sort of like saying, I have those skills. I can do all those things. So maybe the question is, should I really ever do that much again? Unlikely, no. Sorry, very likely, no.
Robbie's put in text that you can't remove the demands that are causing autistic burnout. Can we reflect on that, given the course of the conversation?
Well, I suppose all I can say is that I haven't experienced autistic burnout. I've done a lot of things. I've had a very, very full life, very busy life at different times, and I've not experienced it, which means that, yes, you can step back from the brink if you have enough control over circumstances. And one of the things that Robbie has often expressed is the frustration over lack of control over the circumstances. So I've had a lot more control over the circumstances, so I've been able to stand back from the brink.
I've experienced autistic burnout myself. Being involved or getting so involved, so many things, and overthinking, overdoing. Because the voluntary work I generally do, I'm sort of kind of hands on, not sort of, I am hands on. And sometimes the enthusiasm just causes a burnout because of things that just happen. You know, life gets in the way, or just because I basically burn myself out. But like what Jules says, I do feel that I have control of it, and I have control of, even though it's difficult to do, but I do have control of when to rest, when to reset, and not have pressures on me that I must do certain things, like people like Robbie have explained. There's things that are put on them, so it doesn't give you a chance to recover. I feel I'm privileged enough to have that position. So when I do get burnout, there is recovery. Not right away, and it's not a miracle, but it does happen. The next post is from Nicole Filippone, who's an autistic author, an autistic philosopher of human difference, clarifying human differences through the lenses of philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, and lived experience. And they said the following. Excuse me. Something I wish more people understood about how autistic brains think is that we are not just rigidly focused on details. We see how details fit into the larger system, and we are rigid about them because we understand how interconnected and integral those details are in order for the system to actually function. We are systems thinkers. We are not just detailed oriented. We are detailed oriented so we can make sure the system makes sense. And most of us want the system to make just as much sense to everyone else. We are not just concerned with ourselves. We actually want the rest of the world to have the same clarity we do. It's why we correct others when we notice a detail is off in what they said. It's why we are rigid about what we know. It's why we can sometimes seem argumentative when we are just desperately trying to share our system's level clarity with others. We are not just detailed oriented. We are dual cognition systems thinkers. We see the system and the details at the same time. And if more people understood this, there would be a lot more appreciation for the autistic brain. Deserved appreciation. Because our brains are amazing. They are not a liability. They are an asset to humanity. P.S. I've written a lot about dual cognition, bottom-up processing, and whole-to-part learning in the past few months. You can find everything I wrote on here. And then it goes into links with other information. I think this links in with the last post. What's people's thoughts on this?
Oh, this is music to my ears. There are these self-flagellating posts where autistic people describe how they need to deal with the details of things, but the details of things are entirely necessary to construct the rest of the whole system. I'm doing a piece of work at the moment, and one of the changes I made recently was whether a gel cold pack is folded over in two or whether it's left in a flat position and has another piece moulded against it. And the difference between that tiny little detail changes everything all the way along the cold logistic system, and even right up to the serving position of the machine that would be served by it. The detail of that is incredibly important, and it is the system thinking that goes with it. So what people experience of us is because we are thinking in a very wide and holistic way, because our brains are firing off with all kinds of thoughts. As soon as one puzzle comes up, it kind of creates another puzzle, and so our brain is often thinking about a lot of things all at the same time on lots of branches like a tree. What they see from that is little snapshots where it looks as though we are very focused on something that feels trivial to them, but they can't see the whole thing at the same time like we can. And I really think that is part of the way some of us as autistic people have an advantage over our thinking.
Yes, I agree. And Harry mentioned that it might harken back to the last post. And I think it might, I'm getting this correctly, the way it would for me is that's how a person might end up in a position of doing a lot, maybe even being in some leadership roles in organizations that are difficult to be in or something like that. Burnout.
Yeah, details can sometimes be a frustrating thing. Because sometimes, or maybe most of the time, or maybe all the time, it's only you that sees it. And there's a lot of things that I try and make sense of in life as well. Because I'm involved in community work and I'm involved with, dealing with, local authorities like the local council, Scottish Government, sometimes UK Government, although that's not often. I'm always trying to get the details of how the structure is. And even if something is getting done and doesn't seem fair, I'm trying to see what the logic and the detail is of why it's getting done in the first place. And I don't know if it kind of links to actually this post, but that's what it reminds me of. It just reminds me of thinking of all the details and trying to think of all the logic of why decisions are made and the kind of trying to make sense of a world that doesn't make sense and trying to have some control of it, or at least managing my side of it.
I think the secret there is that you can see that, and a lot of people don't.
It's a strange one because sometimes I feel like a smart ass. But then I'm thinking, maybe I'm not thinking the right way, because when you're talking to other people, it's like they're looking at it, it's like you're complicating it, you should simplify it, even though in my mind I'm trying to simplify what appears to be complicated, or someone is making complicated, whether it's through bias or political games or just the unfairness of how things can be. Kind of rambling a bit here, but that's kind of the thoughts I have.
It makes perfect sense because you're working in a kind of a bureaucratic world. And they do add on things to rules and sets of instructions that then you can see something's broken and then your brain is filtering, I see why they made that decision. It's not a good decision and whatnot. It also harkens to Robbie's frustrations with a bureaucratic system and things like that.
Yeah, what can be helpful, you know, is the Citizens Rights Bureau, which is a kind of advice place for people, dealing with issues like finances and housing and all sorts of things. And they sort of try make sense of the kind of complications that's out there. I mean, they've even been very kind of helpful in terms of the energy crisis, as they call it, in terms of the costs of heating and electricity, gas, all sorts of things. So, yeah. I'm just mentioning that because I'm seeing some of that in the text. I don't want to read it all in case it's actually maybe private. The next post is from Neurospicy Poems, who's a writer, mapping my neurodivergent in a world, AUDHD, PDA, emotional processing, giving inner voices language and relief. My body feels first, my mind understands later. The pathway is the bridge between them. And I've shared the following post. My pathological demand avoidance is always amused by people who act like they have the moral superiority over complex issues like AI usage, neurodivergent labels and diagnosis, or parenting choices. Internally, she's like, shut the fuck up, live your life, and stop telling me what to do. Despite that, I am always open to a polite adult conversation around these topics without getting aggressive or immediately reaching for the block button. What's people's thoughts?
Well, if that's the definition of PDA, I'm PDA, because these are the things that immediately go through my mind. I just put that down to the autistic sense that there is no hierarchy, that people need to be resisted when they are attempting to take control over you. So other people's demands, I feel, whether it's persistent demand avoidance or not, other people's demands are something that we ourselves have to make decisions about, whether we accede to those demands or whether we reject those demands. And we should start from a position of no, then maybe, then yes.
What is the positive reframing of PDA that the community talks about? Is positive something something?
Isn't it positive drive for autonomy?
Yeah, it's
Good man.
yeah.
So how does that feel, Jules? Reframing it as positive demand for autonomy.
It's pervasive.
Yeah, I'll go with demand for autonomy more than drive for autonomy. And drive seems like softening it to me. My thing is no, I have autonomy. Don't fucking take it away from me. I start with autonomy. Protection of my autonomy is where it comes from my point of view.
The problem I had when I lost my father was people seizing control of my life without my consent. They weren't supporting me, they were imposing. And that really wound me up.
Yes, there's a difference between support in someone or advising someone and actually trying to basically tell someone what to do. And sometimes even the people with the best intentions do that. But I know that's not always the case. Some people just want to tell people what to do. They want to have control over people because they think the person that they have control over can't do it themselves and they know better. I mean, that does happen. It's been explained in our conversations many, many times and different experiences. But yeah, I even, I hate that. I hate when someone tries to tell me what to do. Even now, although, thankfully I don't have that experience very often, if at all.
Shall I go first? I was just thinking there, what was life like before there was a block button?
Putting your phone off the hook, I suppose, or pulling it out the wall. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point.
Or maybe just blanking people, going off into that trance.
The next post is someone that we haven't read about for a while. Autism on the Water. Charity organisation which raises awareness and assists autistic people to access sailing and boating in the UK. And it's basically an announcement from the director of Autism on the Water. I'll just read the following. We'd like to announce some changes to our upcoming regatta, which takes place on the 10th to 11th of July. I can't pronounce that. Basically, it's sharing an event, a sailing event, and there's a few changes coming up. And the reason I've shared this is because what Autism on the Water do is what it says. It's like it promotes autism, participation, inclusion, all sorts of things around autism through the hobby and activity of sailing. And it's based in the River Clyde at Rue, Agail Butte, not far from me really. And there's so many different organisations that are involved, and it's like a big, great network. That there's the Open Sailing Club, and there's the Crinan Hotel, and Glencoe Boat Club, all over. And I just thought it'd be good to share this type of thing, because what I like to share on here is not just about the stuff we've talked about already, about the pressures, the topics we've already shared, but it's talking about the activities out there, the positive stuff, the stuff that's activity-based. And it's not just activity-based as in sitting in somewhere, but actually going out and doing something, as in sailing or hobbies, hill walking or whatever. I just do like this sort of community-based sort of work that helps people at least have some kind of routine and some kind of hobby, and even develop a skill. Because there's a lot of people who are very interested in this. There's a lot of good news stories about this particular charity. What's people's thoughts?
I'm thinking quickly here about the duty of care to people who participate in this, because one of my neighbour's children is going away on a big trip up to the west coast of Scotland, a place where we used to go as kids, a place called Lagan and the whole thing is very worrying for everyone concerned because of what might happen when it's bedtime, because usually that's when a return home is requested, and when you're away on the other side of the country, who's going to take care of that? So looking into costs of taxi fares and stuff, it's a lot of worry. So I'll just reflecting on that slightly, thinking about when things are offered, because last week we were talking about, was it forest skills or forest craft, which everybody thought was a very positive thing for people to get involved with outdoors. So I'll leave it at that.
I have an idea on that. So you know how I have international students sometimes? Right now I have an international student who has autism, and so he's able to come to a whole other country and participate in a school program with outings, and his parents and the organizers of these, he's 20 years old, they know there's a place where a neurodivergent person can stay. Maybe it would be great if
Well, thanks everyone. That was a great conversation as always. We went through quite a number of different topics and discussions. And thanks for the people that have shared these posts that we've talked about today. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 24th of May 2026, which is part of the Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is live every Sunday, 5:55 to 7 p.m. UK time. So thank you once again, and I'll speak to you next time.